Steve, anything on the player interviews this week?
Well, let's see. I was there yesterday, and Quinshawn Judkins was there. He said that he was well acquainted already, obviously, as we talked about with the new running backs coach, Carlos Lachlan. Uh, we had Seth McLaughlin earlier in the week and just mentioned how happy he was to be at Ohio State after transferring from Alabama and doing things one way for 3 or 4 years, and now to do things the Buckeye way, this year, and that he was accepted right away. There was no, shunning of the new guys and all these other things. Safety Downs did an interview yesterday and just talked about how important it is to assimilate at Ohio State, play his best football, and win a championship. I mean, these are all the reasons why he came to Ohio State. So, yeah, everything you're hearing is very positive. I mean, midway through spring, there's less than 2 weeks to go to the spring game. Actually, it's a week from Saturday, 9 days away. And it's going to be televised on Fox Network, so the entire country will have a chance to see it. And everything seems to be pretty positive. We all got to attend the student appreciation practice last Saturday, and perhaps everybody wants to share some thoughts about what they saw there. It's one of the few practices we get to watch in the course of the spring, or really the entire year. And I would say the thing that I came away with was the pass protection is only marginally better than what they showed at this time last year. And last year it was just atrocious. So, there were just a lot of negative plays throughout the day. Some guys like Ty Hamilton and CJ Hicks and some really good defensive players really kind of stepped up, I thought. Mitchell Melton made a couple plays. So, yeah, to me, that was kind of my big takeaway from the whole week was just what I saw there on Saturday. And, the quarterback position, those guys are a function of the offensive line. The offensive line probably not exactly where it needs to be just yet. And, I'll throw it open if those guys have anything they want to take either from the interviews or from the practice. But that was probably a little disconcerting to me. Made me kind of tap the brakes just a little bit about this whole thought that they're going to win it all this year.
I'll do a little from column A and a little from column B to get to a question I saw in there. Somebody talking about Dallin looking depressed. Dallin Hayden went and had a huge game. Where was it? Maryland. Really, pulled Ohio State's butt out of the fire. He was hard pressed to crack a smile even then. I just think that he is super chill and doesn't necessarily emote a lot, but I watched him talk too. He wasn't at my table, but I watched kind of the table and I was like, boy, I think he's in like the dentist chair or something like that. He is not having a good time with all of this, but I think I'm going to chalk some of that up to just kind of who he is. To Steve's point about the offensive line, I do want to play counterpoint, and I always hate disagreeing with my boys here, but I'm going to disagree on this one, because if we're saying that Ohio State may have, well, I'm always disagreeing with you, Gerd. If we're saying that Ohio State may have the best defensive line in the nation, I really don't care what the offensive line is doing. If the defensive line is so great, it's going to whoop up on whoever it's playing. I also know a short run of plays that Steve is absolutely referring to that we were all standing next to each other and we're like, ooh, that was something, where Ohio State was running plays from its own one, and in 4 plays, 3 safeties were recorded. Well, that was not a good situation to begin with. So you put what's going to be a strength of the team in the defensive line against a question mark of the team, which is the offensive line, and then you also put them in the shadow of their own goalpost, and it wasn't great. Now, I do agree that maybe we shouldn't be going out and getting fitted for, our fan version of the championship rings yet, because there's a lot of football left to be played. There are a lot of questions, but my big takeaway from the student appreciation practice is, stop me if you've heard this before, Jeremiah Smith is good. Jeremiah Smith made a couple of spectacular catches where I'm not going to say he completely silenced the entire Woody Hayes indoor facility, but the next best thing. And anybody who has been saying, well, it's all well and good that he is looking good in practice right now, but I'll believe he's going to be out there seeing significant playing time as a true freshman when I see it. You better start buying in on this guy, because it is 3 and done, and that first year is going to start immediately. He is just a different cat.
And the thing about Jeremiah is he would have made even more plays on Saturday if the passes were out in front of him, because he was by some defenders, and he would have to come back and then go get the ball and secure it. And the one pass that everybody has probably seen on Twitter, where he's got Denzel Burke against him, watching it live, he kind of has to slow down and then pick up speed again, like while the ball is on its way down, and Denzel Burke is getting a little bit fooled by what Jeremiah Smith is doing. And yeah, he's very, very different. And everybody walked away. I was told the week before that his play on Saturday was one of the words used was breathtaking. And then Kevin says the place kind of goes silent on Saturday. It was breath, like, and then it's all like, oh my gosh. And then you see the pictures in the background, everybody just reacting to what they're seeing. So that was interesting. I thought Devin Brown had a really, really good day throwing the ball downfield. Bryson Rogers had a nice catch on a crosser and then outraced defenders, showing his speed. But back to Jeremiah Smith, honestly, eventually we need to just leave him alone. But this is partly his fault for being outstanding right now. But just even out routes, he's snatching the ball and he's strong. And OSU just released a picture from Monday's practice yesterday, I think, or Wednesday's practice, and he's catching a touchdown on Calvin Simpson Hunt, and he's just got huge hands. The ball's not going anywhere, and he's advanced, and so it's going to be fun to watch. I've that were a guaranteed starter this year, but then you talk to people throughout this winter and getting into closer towards spring, and then you talk to people who have been there throughout spring, and then you see it for yourself, and you're like, know how he doesn't start game one. And so I'm expecting Emeka Ibuka, Carnell Tate, and Jeremiah Smith out there. Now, I saw somebody asking earlier today, is he going to be 1,000-yard receiver? You're talking about 62.5 yards per game in a 16-game season, if that's what you're talking. You're thinking. The problem is you have Emeka Ibuka and Carnell Tate, who Caleb Downs labeled elite yesterday, labeled J.J. Smith elite. So I don't know that you can have enough. What would you do with the 55 catches you get? Maybe that's 1,000. But I think he's going to have a good shot. I've already predicted that he will do it, so I can't back off now. I didn't like my prediction when I said it, but I haven't seen anything from him lately to think, boy, I need to start going back the other way and trying to dial people down. I think we all still need to be careful. He's a true freshman, but he's not just any true freshman.
I think some of it is Brandon Inniss
yet either. I mean,
Brandon Inniss a little bit banged up.
Great off season, so
yeah, Inniss wasn't there on Saturday. He was banged up a little bit. So how does he fit into this whole equation as well? You don't want him to get passed by just because he was hurt, but you do got to be out there to earn your spot too. So we'll see how that transpires, and maybe he'll be back out there for the last week and for the spring game. Hard to say. You just don't know. The quarterback position, I don't think that this scrimmage set up, as Kevin and I were talking yesterday, for what is Will Howard's strength, which is running the ball and throwing the ball. They weren't really allowing the quarterbacks to get hit. It wasn't tackle. So, if he breaks contain and gets loose, they give him 3 or 4 yards, move the ball up 3 or 4 yards, and run the next play. So that's he did break loose for a touchdown in the red zone, but Was it a real touchdown? I don't know. So, but I did think Devin Brown performed pretty well. I thought Lincoln Kienholz made an amazing throw down the middle of the field to Jelani Thurman into triple coverage almost. Put it where only his guy could get it. It had to be a 30-yard gain. And that was an amazing throw by Lincoln Kienholz. So he's got some real ability, folks. And is he ever going to get to play at Ohio State? I don't know. To me, the young freshmen look like freshmen. And I think it's hard to predict or project that one of them is going to start this season unless it's out of complete necessity. Maybe a couple of the other guys have transferred out and somebody gets hurt. Then maybe they would have to start, but I just didn't see it in what I saw on Saturday. I saw a lot of passes that were they were strong balls, but not exactly where they needed to be, if that makes sense. So, I guess I would say that Howard and Brown are a little bit more polished, a little bit more professional at this point. Not meaning they're NFL quarterbacks, just professional college quarterbacks at this point, just a little more polished than those younger guys, but they've got tremendous ability as well. And I'm interested to see how it all shakes out. How do you keep five guys happy? I'm not sure that you do. So we'll see where this looks like in about 2 weeks when the portal opens and if anybody falls into it.
I want to jump on something, and Tony answered in the chat too. Mika Hanna asking about Aaron Noland. Aaron Noland did go through some of the drill work, but they were only running 4 quarterbacks in 7-on-7 and 11-on-11, and Air was not one of them. I think at some point it's hard to run with 5 quarterbacks. There's a reason why teams don't necessarily carry 5. And when you're practicing indoors and you're not running multiple fields, something has got to give. Now, does that mean that Ohio State is already, between the 2 true freshmen has already ranked them? No, I just think it was a case of that. It was probably something where they just felt that it was going to be more important for Julian to get those reps in the 7-on-7 and the 11-on-11 work. But, we saw Aaron Noland to practice yesterday. After practice, they bring us in once practice is done, but a lot of times players are there still putting in a little extra work or whatever. There was, there were a lot of kids that were there. Devin Jordan has a program called Guys with Ties, which are a bunch of 3rd graders who, it's teaching them life skills and how to grow up to be, great young men and everything. They were there shaking hands with players and everything else, but there's no change in status with Aaron Noland. He wasn't hurt. He wasn't missing or anything like that. It was, a DMP coach's decision.
You guys are saying all this about Jeremiah Smith, and if I'm not mistaken, you guys have seen some decent wide receiver play in practice over the last several seasons. Like, you're not comparing this against the Iowa wide receiver room that you've been having to watch over the last several seasons. Guys have seen a few good ones.
The one that I always judge is when I talk about too much, and people probably sick of me hearing about it, is Jackson Smith-Njigba. The first spring practice we got to see in March of 2020 before spring practice was canceled. And he caught everything except for one pass, a deep shot down the sideline that was in coverage, and he came down with it and just lost it as he went to the ground. Other than that, he was outstanding, and it was incredible, and it was a sight to behold. And you knew right then, this guy is going to be special. And he went out that season in 2020 and had 10 catches for 49 yards. Now, the next year, he showed us everything that we had seen. Garrett Wilson, watching him spring as a true freshman, outstanding, blew me away. That was legit. And he came out that season, had 30 catches for like 400 and some yards. This was still another level above that. And this was somebody who looked like the best receiver on the team. Like he from what I've been told, he's been the most targeted guy in the spring. Now, some of that is because Emeka isn't practicing as much because he doesn't need to. Brandon Innes has been dinged up. Cornell Tate doesn't need to practice as much, even though he's still just a young guy. So they're rolling through guys, but it's, it is, you can watch him and he will stand out. And now what does that mean? Again, if I have my, my freshman wide receiver history. Yeah. My chart here, I always have it. So over the last 40 years and probably beyond then, because freshmen weren't really catching the ball before Chris Carter leads with 41 catches for Ohio State freshman receiver all time, 41 catches, 648 yards, 8 touchdowns. Those are all freshman records at Ohio State for wide receivers. The next is David Boston with 33 for 450 and 7. Only 5 guys in the last 40 years have caught more than 15 passes as true freshmen at Ohio State in terms of wide receivers. Carnell Tate was the fifth last year. So this is not something that happens at Ohio State a lot, where freshmen come in and just are a real part of the offense. And Garrett Wilson got into the rotation partly because he is so good, but partly because the rest of the receivers weren't as great. You're talking about guys that he was playing with where maybe Terry McLaurin and Paris Campbell are the only NFL guys at this point. So this is a pretty good receiver room for Jeremiah Smith. It's not overly deep, so he's going to be in the rotation. He would be in the rotation pretty much, not necessarily automatically because he is a true freshman, but it's different. And I'll stop talking because I've talked about it enough, but it's different than what I've seen from other true freshmen.
I'll just, I guess just to bring it to a point, I mean, we certainly have seen some great guys come through. We've seen some guys that have gone on to have miraculous careers at Ohio State, just huge numbers, but have not contributed as a freshman just due to the logjam or whatever. Well, Jeremiah Smith is that icebreaker out there, breaking through everything and getting into calm waters, because he's going to be somebody who's absolutely going to be part of this system. And I think you look at Ohio State brings in Chip Kelly. There's not necessarily going to be a situation of where guys are, okay, you've been here 3 years. I have a history with you. I'm going to try and force the ball into you as much as I can. Chip Kelly is he's here to put up points and yards and everything else like that. And if Jeremiah Smith is going to be able to be the guy that's going to be there, he's going to have a lot of plays drawn up for him. I mean, obviously it's going to come down to whoever the quarterback is, making it through progressions. Everything else is going to be up to the line to sit there and hold and be able to allow routes to be run and things like that. But Jeremiah Smith absolutely is going to rewrite the Ohio State freshman record book without a doubt in my mind. I know in Ohio we no longer have player prop bets anymore, but I'm willing to talk to Shohei Ohtani's guy and put a lot of money down on Jeremiah.
Or just Shohei Ohtani.
Hey, I'm the Dodger fan. He's my guy. I can say that. I'm willing to push my chips all in on Jeremiah.
I want to throw in on the running backs. Great play by Chip Kelly to use the defense's over-exuberance of getting into the backfield against them. Ran a play fake. I don't remember which quarterback. It might have been Howard. Ran a play fake and got Quinshon Judkins on the circle route coming out into the left flat and just kind of dinked it over the defense. And there was nobody there. And he hauled it in, and our photographer, Dan Harker, was in the end zone, and he took off like 60, 70 yards for a touchdown. And in the background, the offensive players that aren't in are kind of milled around on the sideline or behind the offensive set. Here's Travion Henderson. As soon as he's catching this ball and is turned up field, Quinshon Judkins is gone. In the backfield, Henderson's giving it this, with a big smile, knowing that his guy, Quinshon Judkins, his guy he's splitting carries with and splitting work with, is gone. And I got to tell you, that was pretty cool to see that picture and see that play, because it illustrates that now you got 2 game breakers. Judkins can take it to the house at any moment. It was also a sense of consternation, I think, for Jim Knowles and Matt Guerrieri and James Laurinaitis and Tim Walton, like, where the hell was the defense? Like, where were the linebackers, the safeties, and the corners on that play? And it, again, just kind of speaks to Chip Kelly's brilliance that he came up with something to counter what they were doing. I don't want to say he played the play, but had something in his arsenal that, okay, you guys are going to sell out to try and get in the backfield. Here you go. Have a little of this today, because certainly Michigan, Penn State, whoever is going to do that against Ohio State's defense if they get a little too heavy one way or the other. So I forget which player it was. May have been Hicks or Styles or somebody. I don't know that they were the player in on that play, or maybe it was one of the backup linebackers. But Laurinaitis was like nonplussed by that whole situation with the running back coming out of the backfield and going forever. So that was a pretty cool play, in my opinion.
I want to jump in really quick on make a hard right turn right here to Mika asking about Calvin Simpson-Hunt. You got to remember that you have a secondary that is full of veterans, so you're not going to hear as much about some of the twos at this point, and I definitely have Calvin Simpson-Hunt in the twos. It's going to be a long season. Guys are going to see playing time. Let's not forget, if I remember right, Calvin Simpson-Hunt was not an early enrollee last year.
Right.
He was a summer enrollee, so this is his first spring, so it's still very early in the game. Mika had mentioned, I hope he doesn't go to the portal. You're going to have to put in your dues anywhere that you go, really, if you're going to play at a high level. I mean, yeah, you could go to, backwater state somewhere and walk right in and start and be on a really crappy team. So, I mean, there's going to be a level of patience, and I think it's incumbent upon the Ohio State coaches on both sides of the ball to make sure that you are rotating enough to get some of your young guys in for a multitude of reasons. One of them being keeping guys engaged and keeping guys out of the portal. Two, so when you get to the end of this 24 season and everybody and their uncle leaves because they're out of eligibility, draft eligible junior, whatever, we're not having conversations on Ohio State Buckeyes football 315 or whatever episode that's going to be about this team doesn't have any experience. So I wouldn't worry too much about Calvin Simpson-Hunt or some of these other guys. There are guys buried further on depth charts at other positions that, I might be keeping an eye on after spring practice, but Calvin Simpson-Hunt is not one of them.
Yeah, he's redshirt freshman, came in on time last year, which is late, so not concerned about him. And just keep in mind, Ohio State started 4 cornerbacks last year due to injuries, started 5 the year before due to injuries. Denzel Burke hasn't made it through a season completely healthy since his freshman season. And I'm also not convinced that there won't be times where you're giving the game off. You're not going to play this week against Indiana. This will be Jermaine Matthews and Davidson Igbinosun, and the next week it'll be Denzel Burke and Calvin Simpson-Hunt, and Jermaine Matthews will be in the slot or something like that. I think you'll see some of that moving forward. I call it the LeBronization of
management
football, where I can't be expected to play every game. It's hard out here. So I think you'll see some of that there. And in terms of back to the wheel route from Quinshon Judkins, to me, if you watch that again, you'll see Mitchell Melton start to get into the backfield and apparently realizes that should have been his guy because he peels back. But asking defensive end Mitchell Melton to handle Quinshon Judkins is not a winning proposition. And that's not, you can't ask Joey Bosa to do that.
No.